Picture this. Two women, both called Your Royal Highness, standing on the same balcony at Buckingham Palace. One represents 1,000 years of tradition. Gloved hands, perfectly coiffed hair, never a public tear. The other? She's shaking bare hands with AIDS patients, hugging homeless children, and about to shatter every rule in the royal playbook. This is the story of Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana, two women who couldn't have been more different, yet whose legacies are forever intertwined. One would reign for 70 years, becoming the longest-serving monarch in British history. The other would have just 16 years in the spotlight before her life was cut tragically short. But here's the remarkable thing. In those brief 16 years, Diana would fundamentally change what it means to be royal. The making of two icons. Let's start with a fact that might surprise you. Diana Spencer wasn't some outsider who married into the royal family. She was practically family already. Born at Park House on the Queen's Sandringham estate, little Diana actually played with Princes Andrew and Edward as children. She called Queen Elizabeth Aunt Lilibet. Her grandmothers had served as ladies-in-waiting to the Queen Mother. This wasn't Cinderella meeting her prince. This was aristocracy marrying into royalty. But here's where their paths diverged dramatically. Elizabeth became queen at 25, the same age Diana was when she married Charles. But their preparation couldn't have been more different. Elizabeth had spent her entire life training for the throne. During World War II, she served as a mechanic in the Auxiliary Territorial Service, getting her hands dirty with engines and military discipline. She was methodical, private, trained never to show emotion. Even as a teenager, she understood her destiny. Diana? She was working as a nursery teacher's assistant for £5 a week when she caught Charles's eye. No constitutional training, no protocol lessons, no preparation for the goldfish bowl she was about to enter. She'd failed her O-levels twice and was considered academically unremarkable. But she had something else, an intuitive understanding of people, a natural warmth that would prove more powerful than any royal education. And here's something fascinating. Diana's own childhood had been marked by her parents' bitter divorce when she was just 7. She understood abandonment, emotional pain, feeling like an outsider. These wounds would later become her greatest strengths, allowing her to connect with society's most vulnerable in ways the royal family never had before. The fairy tale that changed everything. July 29, 1981, 750 million people worldwide watched Diana walk down the aisle at St. Paul's Cathedral. More viewers than had watched the moon landing. Did you know she accidentally got Charles's names wrong during the ceremony? Instead of Philip Charles Arthur George, she said Philip Charles, a mistake that humanized her instantly. She also refused to promise to obey her husband, a break from tradition that even the Queen had followed in her own wedding vows. But here's what's really remarkable about that dress. It cost £9,000, equivalent to about £43,000 today, and had a 25-foot train. Diana had lost so much weight from pre-wedding nerves that the dress had to be taken in repeatedly. The designers kept the final fitting secret until the last moment because Diana had become so thin they worried about her health. The wedding represented something revolutionary. For the first time, the royal family was welcoming someone who represented the common touch, even though Diana was technically more aristocratic than many previous royal brides. The crowds were unlike anything the royal family had ever seen. Diana fever wasn't just British, it was global. And the Queen, ever the pragmatist, recognized something powerful was happening. Within years of the wedding, Elizabeth made unprecedented gestures. She lent Diana the Queen Mary's Lover's Knot tiara, a symbol of acceptance into the royal family. She granted her the Royal Family Order. The Queen was essentially giving Diana her royal blessing and the tools to modernize the monarchy. But she was also setting up a dynamic that would prove impossible to control. Two approaches to royal duty. Here's where their differences became most apparent, and it's a study in contrasting leadership styles that business schools should teach. The Queen's approach to royal duty was like a master class in constitutional monarchy. Over 70 years, she worked with 15 different prime ministers, from Winston Churchill to Liz Truss. She met with over 110 world leaders, conducted more than 260 official overseas visits, and gave royal assent to thousands of acts of parliament. She never complained, never explained, never revealed her political opinions. Her method was steady, consistent, diplomatic, the human embodiment of British stability. Tony Blair once said he would share highly problematic issues with the Queen during their weekly meetings because she offered a helpful sounding board. She had what leadership experts call servant leadership, putting the needs of her people first, leading by example rather than command. Diana took a completely different approach, and it was revolutionary. In April 1987, she did something that sent shockwaves around the world. At London's Middlesex Hospital, she opened the UK's first dedicated HIV/AIDS ward. And then, in front of cameras, she shook hands with a terminally ill AIDS patient, without gloves. At a time when people believed HIV could be transmitted through touch, this wasn't just compassion, it was revolutionary activism. HIV does not make people dangerous to know, Diana declared. You can shake their hands and give them a hug. Heaven knows they need it. With one gesture, she did more to combat HIV stigma than years of government campaigns. Nelson Mandela later said, when she sat on the bed of a man with HIV/AIDS and held his hand, she transformed public attitudes and improved the life chances of such people. But Diana's revolution went far beyond AIDS awareness. She was the first royal to give birth in a hospital rather than at home, starting a tradition that continues today. She took William and Harry to homeless shelters, to McDonald's on public transport. She wanted them to understand that there are poor people and to have an understanding of people's emotions, people's insecurities, people's distress, and people's hopes and dreams. The relationship behind closed doors. So what was their relationship really like? The popular narrative paints them as adversaries, but the truth is more complex and more human. Royal biographer Andrew Morton revealed that Diana often appeared unannounced at the palace during her marriage troubles. Initially, the Queen was tolerant of these visits. Diana was usually in better mood when she left than when she arrived, recalled palace staff. But as Diana's emotional state deteriorated, Elizabeth came to dread these meetings. Here's a scene that perfectly captures their dynamic. During one particularly difficult conversation, Diana burst into tears, claiming everyone was against her. The Queen didn't know what to do, a lady-in-waiting recalled. She has always hated this kind of emotional confrontation and, frankly, has never had to deal with it before or since. The Queen, who had been trained to suppress emotion, was facing someone who wore her heart on her sleeve. But don't mistake the Queen's discomfort with emotional scenes for coldness. During their hour-long conversation, Elizabeth reassured Diana that she would never lose custody of William and Harry, a profound relief for the princess and a sign of genuine care from the Queen. The Queen also showed her support in subtle ways. When Diana represented her at Princess Grace of Monaco's funeral in 1982, it was a significant gesture of trust for such a new royal. Here's something most people don't know. The Queen actually tried to be a supportive mother-in-law. According to royal biographer Ingrid Seward, she was very supportive of Diana. Diana always felt that the Queen was a kind of marital referee and that the Queen should really intervene over her husband's relationship with Mrs. Parker Bowles. But the Queen's policy was to hope for the best. The tragedy is that these two women, with their different but complementary strengths, could have been an unstoppable team. The Queen had institutional knowledge and global respect. Diana had the common touch and media savvy. Instead, Charles's failing marriage put them on opposite sides of a very public war. The crisis years and transformation. 1992 was the Queen's annus horribilis, her horrible year. 3 of her children's marriages fell apart, Windsor Castle caught fire, and Diana, her true story was published, revealing intimate details about the royal family's private struggles. When palace officials asked Diana point blank if she had cooperated with the book, she looked them in the eye and lied, no. But here's what's fascinating. Even during this crisis, both women were learning from each other. the Queen began to understand that the old ways weren't working. She agreed to pay taxes on her private income, something she had never done before. She allowed cameras into royal residences. She was adapting, showing that even after 40 years on the throne, she could change. Diana, meanwhile, was becoming more sophisticated in her use of media. She understood that every photo told a story. When she visited landmine sites in Angola in 1997, wearing a protective visor and walking through active minefields, the images were so powerful they helped bring about an international ban on landmines. She was using her celebrity for genuine political change. Then came August 31st, 1997. Diana dies in Paris, and the Queen makes what many consider the biggest mistake of her reign. She stays at Balmoral with William and Harry instead of immediately returning to London. The public is furious. Where's their Queen? Why isn't the flag at half-mast? Show us you care, demanded the Daily Express. But here's another perspective. Maybe the Queen was being a grandmother first, a monarch second. William later said he was grateful for the privacy to grieve. At the time, my grandmother wanted to protect her two grandsons and my father as well, he reflected. And when Elizabeth finally did speak, her tribute was genuine and revealed how much she had learned from Diana. No one who knew Diana will ever forget her. I admire and respect her for her energy and commitment to others, especially for her devotion to her two boys. Lasting legacies and the Diana effect. Diana's death marked a turning point that reverberates to this day. The royal family learned that the traditional stiff upper lip approach had limits. They needed Diana's emotional intelligence, her ability to connect, and slowly they adapted. Today we see Diana's influence everywhere in the modern monarchy. Prince William speaks openly about mental health, unthinkable in his grandmother's era. He's described his vision as doing royal duty with maybe a smaller R in the royal. Kate Middleton does walkabouts, hugging children and chatting with crowds, wearing accessible fashion from high street stores. Prince Harry founded Senta Bale, working with AIDS orphans in Lesotho, directly continuing his mother's work. Even the Queen began showing more emotion in her later years. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when she delivered special broadcasts to comfort the nation, her approach was warmer, more personal than ever before. The images of her sitting alone at Prince Philip's funeral, following COVID protocols, humanized her in ways previously unimaginable. But Diana's influence goes deeper than just emotional openness. She democratized royalty. Before Diana, royal walkabouts were formal affairs with planned interactions. Diana threw out the script. She would kneel down to speak to children at their eye level, break away from planned routes to speak to someone who caught her attention, spend extra time with anyone who seemed distressed. Recent polls show this transformation worked. Prince William is now the most popular royal with 75% approval, followed closely by Kate at 72%. As one royal expert noted, clearly William is doing something very right. His informal, approachable way of going about his work is resonating with the public. The next generation. Here's something that would have amazed both women. Their great-granddaughter, Princess Charlotte, embodies both their legacies. Royal watchers note she has Diana's Spencer stare and expressive eyes, but also the Queen's composure and sense of duty. She's being raised to understand both tradition and modernity, duty and emotion. Prince William has promised a Diana reboot of the monarchy when he becomes king, combining the best of his mother and his grandmother. He understands that modern royalty must serve not just as constitutional figureheads, but as emotional leaders who can connect with people's hopes and fears. The irony is beautiful. Diana, who struggled so much with royal protocol, ultimately saved the monarchy by forcing it to evolve. The Queen, who initially struggled with Diana's emotional approach, lived to see how powerful that approach could be when properly channeled. 2 women, 1 revolution. So who wins in Diana versus the Queen? The question itself misses the point. These weren't competitors. They were complementary forces who together redefined what monarchy could be in the modern world. Elizabeth gave the monarchy longevity and stability. She was the bridge between the empire and the Commonwealth, between wartime Britain and the digital age. Her 70-year reign wasn't just the longest in British history, it was a masterclass in adaptation and survival. She showed that duty and service could be a lifetime commitment. Diana gave the monarchy heart. She showed that royalty could be both elevated and relatable, that duty could include compassion for the forgotten and marginalized. In just 16 years, she transformed the royal family from distant figures to accessible humans. She proved that showing vulnerability could be a strength, not a weakness. The real winner? The future of the monarchy itself. Today's royal family combines Elizabeth's sense of duty with Diana's emotional intelligence. They understand that modern leadership requires both stability and empathy, both tradition and innovation. Two icons, two eras, one extraordinary evolution of what it means to serve. Elizabeth taught us that consistency and duty could weather any storm. Diana taught us that royalty with humanity is more powerful than royalty without it. Together, they created a template for 21st century monarchy that their successors continue to follow. And the revolution continues.